Ah, Grimdark. That fantasy subgenre that asks the question, what if everything and everyone sucked? It seems like these types of books have gained quite a bit of popularity in recent years, but some people might feel like there aren't enough good ones out there. Everyone knows about the big one that's taking its sweet time, but did you know there is another? Yeah, you probably did. First Law isn't exactly niche. It gained the popularity it deserves, but let's try to give it some more. If you're unfamiliar, First Law is a series of fantasy books written by Joe Abercrombie. It's about a war, several wars, but more importantly, the people living in that world. And boy, do we have some people. The series gets its name from one of the two laws imposed by a god ages ago, saying not to mess with the other side, talk to demons or open gates into their realm. Coincidentally, all the cool stuff is on the other side. The second law, a bit more straightforward, don't eat human flesh. To think he had to write that one down. Now, there is something about Abercrombie that not everybody knows, and only someone with a keen eye and attention to detail might spot, and that is that he is British. That might mean something, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that seems to have an effect on his books. There is a certain amount of cheekiness to his writing, so let's get one thing cleared up right away. First Law isn't Grimdark. What is even Grimdark? What does it mean? Is it no happy endings? More focus on realism? No black and white morality? The absence of heroes? It's difficult to define. The world is dark at times, yes, and the characters are dubious at best, but it's where Abercrombie's dirty little secret comes into play and sets the series apart from the others. The books are written in a realistic way, but other than the horrors and tragedies of war, you also see the funny side of it. Kind of like the funny side of being crucified. People still die, bad things happen to everyone all the time, and yet I never found myself miserable while reading the books.
So, you're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
We see the world through characters' eyes, and that influences it a lot. I'm not saying anyone here is living their best life, but they are different shades of shitty. So, despite all the suffering, the books won't leave you feeling horribly depressed, like, oh I don't know, Russian literature. So, in conclusion, First Law is grimdark, but it can also be hysterical at times. So now that we've set the tone, let's take a look at the setting. It's quite easy to wrap your head around this one. It takes some inspiration from medieval Europe, and Abercrombie drops some subtle hints that confirm this. The main parts of the story revolve around the wars between the three world powers, the Union, the North, and the Gurkish Empire. There's other stuff going on as well, but it often ties back to those conflicts. The books go over many aspects that are the result of that, like battles, political intrigue, espionage, as well as more personal things, like the search for power, revenge, and yeah, there's a lot of revenge. There are fantastical elements in the world, but they don't take the spotlight often. Reading the books, it's easy to forget sometimes that they are fantasy. But there are things like wizards, ghosts, magical artifacts, weird castles that are a dimension on their own, and strange, mysterious powers related to eating human flesh. The world also has a history containing gods and demons that slowly unravels as the books progress. So, Book 1. What is it about?
It's about nothing.
The series as a whole is very character-driven, but that's especially the case with Book 1, The Blade itself. You meet the main cast of characters and get to know their ambitions and goals, their pasts and their thought processes. The plot picks up in the second one, and now you know all the characters and what's at stake. But even after The Blade itself, the main focus of the books are the characters. One plotline, for example, is a group of people going to a place to get a thing. Most of the conflicts there still arise from them interacting and getting on each other's nerves. And while the world is depicted more realistically than some other fantasy books, there are still events and turns of epic proportions, incredible bursts of devastating power and carnage. Those moments are used sparingly, but when they hit hard. But back to the real focus of the books. There are no characters like Abercrombie characters. Whatever you think of them, you won't be indifferent. Some you will absolutely hate, while others you love. And you might be surprised who makes that list. Not many would predict their favorite character in a book to be a sadistic, crippled torturer who works for the Inquisition, kidnapping people off the street and extracting information from them in brutal ways, be they innocent or guilty. But here we are. There aren't many viewpoints in the books, 3 main ones and 3 secondary ones, so we get to know those 6 people well. Let's go over them. The aforementioned torturer, once an accomplished soldier who was taken by the enemy and horribly tortured, now left with most of his teeth missing, a crooked spine and a bad leg, making his every step agony. A glimpse into his head informs us about the resentment and pessimism he feels for the world and everyone in it. He's great. Logan Ninefingers, better known by some as the Bloody Nine, is a Northman with a pretty brutal reputation. Once one of the strongest warriors in the North, he has now decided to pursue a different path in life and make an attempt to leave all the violence behind. Abercrombie does some interesting stuff here with the classic barbarian berserker trope. A noble-born who has never faced any hardships in his life, and it shows. He is shallow, vain, arrogant, and entitled. He spends most of his time drinking, gambling, or courting women. Other than pretty decent sword-fighting skills, he doesn't have much more going on for him, so when he's thrust out into the real world, his sheltered life doesn't do him any favors. Colum West is pretty much the opposite. Born as a commoner, he climbed the ranks through hard work and determination. He's friends with Giselle, so their differences shine even more when they're together. He often tries to do the right thing and help out those around him. He's probably one of the characters that seem like a good guy in this world, until he isn't. Pharaoh is an escaped Gurkish slave with one thing on her mind: revenge. She is driven mostly by the need to make the Gurkish pay for everything they did to her, and even though she gets involved in other storylines and side quests, it's only to further her real goal. As a result of her past, she's antisocial, suspicious of everyone, and deeply traumatized. Also, her ancestry might be a bit shifty. A part of Ninefingers' old crew, along with a few more members, Dogman is the best scout in the north. He earned his name for his exceptional sense of smell. Another dog-like quality is his unwavering loyalty to his friends and crew. He would follow them to the grave. On the run from the north, him and his crew try to make their own way, until they notice a new threat. Characters evolve throughout the books, usually one step forward, 3 miles back, and whatever the plot, it's a joy to follow them. The series consists of the first Law trilogy, which is the Blade itself, Before They Are Hanged, and Last Argument of Kings. I would say the story wraps up nicely, but it's still open for more. And don't worry, there is more. Following the trilogy, we have a few standalones, taking place in the same world and involving a few familiar faces. Those are Best Served Cold, a classic tale of, you guessed it, revenge. The Heroes, basically a 3-day-long match of King of the Hill. Red Country, a rescue mission in a western setting. And Sharp Ends, a short story collection. Years pass between every book, and we can see the world slowly changing. So when we get to the next trilogy, we're hitting the Industrial Revolution. Age of Madness trilogy is set some 30 years after the first one, and consists of A Little Hatred, The Trouble with Peace, and The Wisdom of Crowds. Some old characters appear, but most of them are new players, some even descendants of the first Law crew. And that's it for now. Abercrombie mentioned that he's not done with this world, but it might be a while before his next installment. Plenty of time to catch up. It would be a crime not to mention the audiobooks here. Stephen Pacey narrates them all, and he has mastered voicing each and every character, down to an art form. Listen to this.
I wonder what poor fool is being questioned in there, what crime they are guilty or innocent of, what secrets are being picked at, what lies cut through, what treasons laid bare. Logan Ninefingers, then, the one they call the Bloody Nine. I have heard stories about you, even shut up here in my library. Logan winced. He could guess what sort of stories the old man might have heard. That was a long time ago. Of course, we all have a past, eh? I make no judgments on hearsay. And Baez smiled.
So, if there's anything to take away from the books, it's that reading dark fantasy doesn't have to be a miserable experience, and that eating human flesh can give you cool superpowers.